What a joy is the Haskell Symposium and the Haskell Implementers Workshop. GHC in particular has become such a large beast that is beyond my puny capacity to understand everything that's going on. It really is a community project, so a big thank you to all of you who are contributing to it. This status report is just a kind of little summary of some pieces that I understand. We're also going to hear a bit about GHC proposals, a bit about the sort of DevOps situation from Ben, and also in about 5 minutes I'm going to invite people who are just doing stuff in GHC, some project related to the GHC ecosystem, to come up and give a sort of 20-second plug for what they're doing, so that I'm not stuck with falsely representing them. Let's just first of all take a quick look at what's been happening the last little while. Going back a bit, January 2017, GHC8, I call this the monster, because it had a lot of stuff in it. This is the same list that I put up this time last year. In particular, type in type, which is lovely, but we have been settling it down ever since. Each successive release, the first thing is consolidation. This isn't just fixing bugs. This has been a lot of filling out the design envelope. There were a lot of proposals. We just seen one in the Haskell Implementers Workshop about visible dependent quantification that feel like filling out the design envelope to make what we have make sense. So this is largely stuff that you've already seen about this time last year. So in the upcoming release, what's happening? Actually, it's mainly so the upcoming. When I say upcoming, we have alpha and beta out.
The release candidate is out, and hopefully we'll have a release in a few days.
Right, a few days. So this in a few days you will have consolidation and some other stuff. So what do we got? Visible kind applications. Thank you to
me and Gwyn. Me and Gwyn.
Me and Gwyn.
No, it's one.
my student, me and Gwyn.
Right, thank you. Yes. I have trouble with pronunciation challenge, but thank you. So, what's the idea? So, we've had visible type application for quite a bit. You can say explicitly, say instantiate map at type int, and now we just do the same thing in type. So, you can explicitly say instantiate this polymorphic, polykinded type constructor T at kind type. So that's what I mean by filling out the design envelope. That should, it's really to have this without having this. So now now it's simple and consistent. There we are. So visible kind application. There's another user visible change in GHC 8.8 is that we changed the design decision about pattern signatures. Maybe not all of you know about pattern signatures. When you have a pattern match, you can give a signature to a whole pattern, not just necessarily a variable, that gives the type of that variable, and that binds the three type variables of that type. So this A here is not currently in scope. Look, there's no A bound anywhere. This brings A into scope so that you can mention it over here. So this is a binding occurrence of A, and that is a bound occurrence of A. Okay? So this kind of makes sense. So A here really just gets to be a name for this sort of mysterious, invisible sort of scolum type of B. But the change in 8.8, which is driven by a whole lot of other things, is that here, even if the function has type maybe int to listed int, now A is still brought into scope, but it's simply a local name for the type int. Right? So it no longer necessarily stands for a type variable. It was always a bit unsatisfactory saying it's a type variable because there could have been several different names for the same variable. Now we're honest, it just stands for a type. Does that make sense? In pattern signatures. That's a fairly significant change. But those are really the only two. There's a lot of concrete being poured into the consolidation aspect of 8.8, but I think those are the most significant user visible changes. Okay? So what else is happening? What else is it? What was that concrete pouring look like? Actually, there's a lot of people pouring now. This is the list of new contributors during the last year, and by new I mean people who have never contributed before. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So astonishingly, I went to bed and said, have we really every single year had 60 or 70 new people writing patches for GHC? The answer is yes. That's what the logs say. That's a lot of people. So thank you, everyone in the room who's represented somewhere here. I think that represents quite a positive signal on the participation in the engine room of GHC. This is the what merge requests look like. So we're running a couple of hundred merge requests. This, by the way, goes back several years. This picture only goes back to the beginning of when we switched to GitLab in January. Right? So it doesn't go back nearly so far. But this is monthly. So we're running about 200 merge requests a month. That's like 10 a day, or 8 a day. That's a lot going by. So there's a lot of activity. That means a lot of code review and everything. So thank you for that. New issues, as they're now called, no longer tickets, but they're issues. We're running at about 1,400 a year. That's a lot, right? 1,400 times people have said something wrong is going on. And this is only this year so far. But it's an indication of activity and participation and collaboration, so I like that. A little bit about what's cooking, what's happening. So people who've got something to say about what they're working on in GHC, just drift near to the front. And so you're ready. Here's some things that I know. Linear types. But many of you will know about linear Haskell, and Arno and Christoph have been hard at work actually implementing linear types on a fork. Richard and I are committed to doing lots of code review on this. Mostly it's sort of there. Standalone kind signatures. This is a very current work by Vlad. So here I wrote a comment in an earlier slide. I said I've got a data type T, and I wrote as a comment that T has this kind. But it's madness that we can't write that T has this kind, like we can for ordinary functions. We should be able to write a standalone kind signature for any type constructor, and you will be able to do this. It's super desirable, and I think it's astonishing that we've lived without this for so long. So, thank you, Vlad. What else? Matthias has been working on a whole fits. Chongo, I haven't got this on this list. Chongo is working on unsaturated type families. He has a fork with much of that done. Sebastian is actually interning at Microsoft at the moment, improving the pattern match overlap checker. Hands up if you would like a better pattern match overlap checker, one that works faster and has fewer false positives and false negatives. So I'm very hopeful about this thing we factor in. Lots of work on compile time performance, by which I mean let's not compile quite so slowly as before. Slowly, but not quite as slowly. So we're going to invest a little effort in that. In response to my email, Tillman vote. I don't know, vote. Whatever. I don't know him personally, but when I sent him an email, I said, what is everybody doing that isn't here to tell them about? He said he's working on some kind of tool for visualizing GHC core, so I'm quite interested to see that. Okay, anybody else for what's cooking?
I have a few things to say.
Yeah, good.
So with Richard's work, Wellspire is working on improving our 3D printer, well, not necessarily a 3D printer, but our error message representation to make these errors more amenable to analysis and rendering by IDEs and other downstream tools. Idris has had this for years, and yet somehow we still have not managed to make this work. So this is finally going to change this year. It's a huge design space, so if you have thoughts or you consider yourself a consumer, please get in touch. That's all.
Very good. Okay, thanks. Well, let's come on this side.
So I'm Andreas Griebinger, and in the backend I just applied some already known knowledge what we should do. So I applied some basic control flow optimizations. Some of it is already built in 8.8, and I have another merge request which adds about 1% of runtime performance. So yeah.
Good, thank you.
Right.
So cool. Okay.
Never. So hi, I'm Guido Martinez. You might remember last year SAS was supposed to do a paper about a thing called class morphism. It was a way to relate superclasses in a way, create superclasses in an open fashion. So to solve this kind of thing of like funker monad or having semi-group monoid, or looking now at Android here with selected, which we might want to get into a hierarchy somehow. So we had a paper last year and we had a prototype that was kind of close, so I just wanted to update that. We're going to do a complete proposal in like 1 or 2 weeks. The project is quite done, so yeah, I'm happy to discuss with anyone here or online.
Great, thank you. Thanks. That was just under 30 seconds, very good.
Okay, so I've been working on GHCS. There's been lots of things with plugins, and well, typically they don't work with cross-compilers. Well, the good news is we have a prototype thing where they do work with GHCS. Currently the problem is that you have to build your package both with GHCS and with GHC, and there's a bit of hacks. Incidentally, this means you can build GHC library with GHCS, but anyway, no one really wants that. That should, we're working on making that work. Also, Cabal new build works.
But we're working on making GHCs more like normal GHC and reducing the amount of patching the library requires by having a proper C toolchain and scripting really. And lastly, we have some new profiling tools with CPU profiling in Electron apps, so you can really see what's happening. You can press start and record and select the time. It's much more interactive. It's quite nice as a start, and yeah, let's see what we can get from here.
Hi, I'm Carter Schoenwald. I have a number of things going on, but one thing that I got merged in for 8.10 and onwards is removing x87 from the native cogen. For the 5 people in this room who probably use Intel 32-bit, rounding is now deterministic by default. For everyone else, it just means if you want to dig into the native cogen, there's fewer weird parts you have to understand. We're no longer faking on certain platforms having registers where on a stack machine kind of shenanigans.
Thanks.
Just a short one I'm currently working on the no field selector language extension, which allows you to disable the selector generation for records, which is very useful, for example, with complicated record fields, where the selectors are mostly unusable anyway because of the somewhat lacking words there, which is fine because it can. There's a reason why it's not getting improved. It will not get improved, and but actually just disabling them is usually a better solution because you already use lenses anyway.
Good, thank you. Is this something? Or are you just taking the microphone? There he goes. You're just taking the microphone. Yeah. So these folk and folk like them are people who are really making GHC and its ecosystem better. So let's get them a round of applause.
Right, so Simon doesn't stand here all the time. Well, no, I got this one. So we have this GHC proposal process that is meant for the community to discuss what kind of feature we want in the 8.10 and 8.12 and 8.14 and so on, with more visibility than we had a few years ago, when basically it meant you have to catch one of the assignments during ICFP and talk to them over lunch and then get them to think your features great. And I think this is going very well. We've had 248 total number of PRs, and this is a nicely inflated picture because it not only includes proposals but also other PRs that like change typos of existing proposals. But it's a good number, and it's big, and we have 79 more than when we stood here a year ago. Maybe the interesting one is the number of accepted proposals. So we have 56 proposals accepted in total. By now, not all of them implemented. So it's just about saying, yay, we think this is a good idea. It doesn't mean that we do the work. So it'll still need somebody else to, either the author or someone else, to pick it up and actually implement it. And even then, the implementation still needs to go through all the review for that. So we don't have 56 fancy features in GHC yet, but at least 56 are there where we think this is looks good. And almost half of them are in the last year, so it's alive and kicking. You can tell that we're actually accepting much more than we're rejecting. This is partly a good artifact of the process where we have discussion before it even gets officially submitted to the committee. So some proposals that are just maybe good ideas on first glance, they just kind of fizzle without going through a heavyweight process where you get a big red no, which I think is good for the configuration. So these are the things that we got through the last year, and I'm not going to go through them, just show you this is some of them, and there are more. And I hope that next year we'll have at least another 2 slides of fancy cool proposals. Who is we? We is a pretty much self-selected set of people that we kind of nominated 2.5 years ago, and some of them have rotated out. So I want to thank especially those who served but now left us. So Ryan, Roman, Ben, and Manuel have been in the committee, and now they're emerituses, which is very nice. And we have new people joining for them. So particularly new since last year is Arno, Sandy. Okay, sorry, I didn't mark the bigger one. Vitali, yeah, correct. And again, this is the committee is self-selecting. So whenever somebody wants to leave the committee, we send out an email asking for nominations. You can nominate yourself, or you can get nominated, which is essentially the same because you only want to get nominated when you actually agree to it. But it looks better, and then we internally deliberate on that. And the aim is to have a very good coverage of the various, I guess Simon calls them constituencies of Haskell. So there should be some developers on Haskell, some developers who use Haskell, some people in education, some people in research, some people in industry. And we might want to make it a bit more explicit in the future that we make sure that we really cover all areas. Next time the nomination comes around, I really want to encourage people here in the audience who I don't know to consider to nominate yourself, because obviously we only think of the people that we know, but this will not give the wide coverage of people we want to have. It's not all going, like I think the process in general works kind of well. Like we make progress, we accept things, some proposals get thoroughly checked and approval happens during the process. So overall it's good, but it's not perfect. We had in particular one proposal, which unsurprisingly was about syntax. Sorry, this is maybe a mistake on my side. It's not 166 votes, 166 messages on the thread. So it was an endless discussion on, do we want to allow more commas or not? Where do we want to allow the Potter syntax with other proposals? In the end, we had a vote, which was then, well, it was a mess. So we need to tweak our processes. We had a good discussion among the committee over lunch 2 days ago, and for example, we recently moved the way where we have the committee internal discussions onto GitHub to make it more visible, but now it's drowning in other comments. So we might want to tweak that again a little bit more. The proposal seems to be to keep the technical discussion on the GitHub thread so that everybody can see it, but then keep the deliberation and voting and opinion stating a bit more, not hidden because the mailing list is public, like the archive is public, but at least a bit more quiet and on the mailing list. I mentioned that we rotate out members. So far it's mainly an ad hoc thing where we rotate people out when they want to leave because it's work and people want to leave, and that's fine. But we might want to add a more predictable schedule in the future, just like most committees out there. And I guess the main important thing and the most important line on this slide is the last one. How happy are you all with the process? Do you think you get your voice heard? And I will ask this now, but I think we can leave the discussion to the, I guess, part of the panel discussion later. So if you have anything to say about the GHC proposal in particular, feel free to raise it when it comes to the panel in a very short while. That's it from my side. And
yes,
good job.
I think we all owe Joachim a huge debt of gratitude. He's secretary of the committee, and it's a huge amount of work. And he does a really great job, much better than when I did.
And it's the only reason it works as well as
yeah. So do you need to, should I be careful?
I don't want to say anything else.
Okay, yeah.
Should have worked in your case as well, right?
So here, right. And let's look at this again. Okay, so. All right, here we go again. It leads us on, right? I mean, there's changes. If it were only just a side. No, okay. Let me. And I just prior to this, there's another. No.
Semantic meaning to the card.
Just use that one. All right, so let's see. Try this again. Can you hear me? There was a microphone somewhere. There wasn't there. I think I lost it though. So okay. Great. So let's see, and that won't do. Okay, 1 second. Almost there. Okay. Okay.
Tantalizing.
Okay, there we go. Okay, perfect. All right, so yes, this week, as well as this year, have been, let's say they've been busy on both counts. So on the DevOps front, GHC is, I think, now in a better position than it has ever been. We have gone through, put out almost five releases, four, and five in a few days, hopefully, as we'll say in a few moments. We've gone through a complete infrastructure reboot. We have indeed seen the sort of benefits in contributor engagement and sort of velocity, as some people would say, through allowing sort of more GitHub-like experience. We have more rigorous testing now, and we've worked on killing various technical debt, final push on Hadrian, and we generally have a more automated both release process and just generally day-to-day operations. So first, the elephant in the room. Everybody has this question. I've heard it many times. What is going on with 8.8? And thankfully, as of, I think, today, in maybe a few hours, we will have final binary distributions for 8.8.1, which is been a long time coming, obviously, and there's a variety of reasons for that. But we'll get to that in a moment. The point being, we have final binary distributions in the next few days. There's some final administrative things to take care of and upload the binary and such. But we should see an announcement in the next few days. So, the release cycle. Now, on the whole, here we have 8.8.1. It's obviously a few months later than expected, but we've discussed it with many of you, and people generally tend to think that, well, you know, it's worth, we do want to continue the 6-month cadence, so let's really try to push for it, right? I mean, we have 8.8.1 in August, so 6 months from August is approximately February, and that actually coincides relatively well, despite the, so we're going to push for that branch in November 2019, release in February for 8.10. And of course, that does mean that it will be a relatively, we have some time to catch up on. So this will likely be a smaller release, but that is indeed one of the points of this process, of the Credence cadence, is to provide smaller but more regular releases. And so we expect then to continue this and shift back towards our original May release date for 8.12. And from there on, we'll likely have sort of a fall-spring release cycle. So, of course, there have been some challenges in maintaining the cadence, and this is something that we have been discussing internally. The GitLab migration in particular incurred a significant cost, but now we think most of that is behind us. But there are still some outstanding questions, and in particular, coordinating releases of core libraries has been a particularly sticky problem. And it's as much a social problem, or a social challenge, as it is a technical one. And so we're discussing internally how to sort of smooth that process a bit. Hopefully we'll be able to make some progress on that before 8.10. So, as you said, there's been a huge amount of work in continuous integration, and this is all in the effort to improve release robustness, and hopefully allow us to stick to this 6-month cadence. And it has been an enormous investment, but it's now really starting to pay off. So we have now support more platforms, more operating systems than we did previously. We've had now with a sort of proper unified CI infrastructure, we can start supporting things like Alpine, which have been very much requested by Alpine Linux, very much requested from users. AR64, which many of you know use. So this is something that now we can finally actually support out of the box. We now support more configurations, which hopefully will find fewer regressions in things like integer simple that are used but not used as frequently as the sort of default path of integer GMP. And we'll find such regressions before they make it into a release. And finally, we now have the ability to actually generate all of our binary distributions are generated via CI. So that reduces the cost to making these releases. So, in addition, we've talked in this venue for a long time about how do we want to actually ensure that GHC doesn't just pass its test suite, but also ensure that it actually passes its package, and moreover, allow you all to test your own packages against GHC pre-releases. And this is something that we've been working pretty hard on. So we've been sort of taking on responsibility for the head.package patch set that Herbert Vidal started last year. And this is a patch set that adapts a selection of packages to allow them to build with pre-release GHCs. And currently it covers around 150 packages. We have a CI for it now. So, and we're asking you all to not only help test it, test your own packages, but also maybe even add them. If you have a library, especially if it's widely used in the community, that you want to contribute a patch to forward it to GHC pre-release, please. We're going to be documenting the process to do that in the coming weeks, and your help is invaluable. We can't do it all alone. So, and moreover, we now also have a package repository, so we can actually, if you use Cabal install, you can just add a few lines to your Cabal project file, and you will have the ability, you'll pull the patched versions of these hatch packages present in head.package into your project, and hopefully things will just build. So, in addition, we now have been working on sort of a renewed effort on performance, and part of that is measurement. The first thing we need to do is understand where these problems lie, and so we're trying to build the infrastructure to record a record of the compiler's performance on from a variety of sources. So the test suite, NoFib, and also head.package itself. And this will allow us to better allocate, better determine when not only regressions occur, but hopefully also when we've improved things, and actually better characterize where we have to focus. So Hadrian finally is merged upstream. Lots of bug fixes went in last year, and it's beginning to now look like a functional build system that we could actually use in place of the make build system, which is incredibly exciting. It's been a long time coming, and thanks to Andre and everyone else who has helped in the past years, we've been working on trying to make it put into a shape where it can actually be used by end users and distributors. So we have now a much better scheme for setting up build configuration, and we've also put a fair amount of effort into trying to explore the feasibilities in cloud shapes caching. Unfortunately, ended up that was a bit hairier than we anticipated. But we now have a much better understanding of what needs to happen in order to use cached builds, which would help in CI and local development. If this is something of interest to you, please do get in touch. There are very concrete things that could be done here. And finally, if you build GHC, please test Hadrian. Forget about me. It never existed. We want testers for Hadrian, and moreover, we want bug reports. We really want to be able to get this. Perhaps even consider deprecating Make in 8.12 if things go well. So I believe that is pretty much everything. So this was a year of infrastructure revamp. Thankfully, now coming to a close, onwards to 8.10, and we'll have interesting things next year.
Let's finish the panel discussion, but it is worth saying that GHC would simply fall apart without Ben's spinning of plates. You can see that there are a lot of plates now spinning. So thank you very much, Ben.